Before we begin, if you enjoy calm, cinematic, reflective, soothing, gentle, meditative narration, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It helps you find more of these serene, nighttime reflections. Marcus Aurelius never meant for anyone to read his words. The meditations he wrote were private notes to himself, jotted down in army tents, in the cold, in sickness, in exhaustion. They weren't polished lectures or proud declarations. They were the quiet reminders of a man who held the entire Roman Empire in his hands, yet struggled with the same emotions, the same doubts, the same frustrations that we all do. He wasn't writing to impress anyone. He was writing to steady his own mind, to keep his heart from drifting, to remember what mattered when the world became loud. That's why his philosophy feels so strangely intimate, not grand like Plato, not analytical like Aristotle, but deeply personal, almost like reading another person's conscience. Every line is a negotiation between who he was and who he wanted to be. Every page is an act of self-discipline, a soft refusal to be carried away by anger, fear, or desire. Every sentence is a man telling himself, return to yourself, remember your duty, remember your nature. You are temporary, but you can be noble. Tonight, we step into that quiet space with him. Not as citizens of Rome, not as students in a lecture hall, but simply as humans trying to find steadiness in a restless world. And Marcus Aurelius, the reluctant philosopher-emperor, will guide the way. The principle of inner citizenship, ruling yourself first. Marcus Aurelius ruled millions of people, commanded armies, and held absolute power. Yet he insisted that the real empire he had to govern was the one inside his own chest. He believed that before you can lead others, before you can influence the world, before you can even call yourself free, you must learn to rule yourself. But here's the twist. Ruling yourself, in Marcus's eyes, didn't mean being harsh or rigid. It meant being responsible for the movements of your own mind. It meant catching yourself when you slipped into resentment or fear or fantasy. It meant noticing the stories you tell yourself and seeing how they shape your reactions. He often wrote, "Your mind is your kingdom. Guard it." That wasn't a metaphor, it was a command. Because Marcus saw clearly that you don't control the world, you don't control fate, you don't control what other people think, say, or do. But you do control how you interpret what happens. You control the lens. And if the lens is warped, everything appears distorted. So Marcus trained himself, day after day, even on the battlefield, to return to a simple discipline. Do not let your mind become a tyrant. Do not let emotions overthrow your reason. Do not let impulses seize the throne. Do not let noise drown out the quiet voice that knows what is right. He taught himself to stand guard at the gate of his thoughts, not to suppress them, but to inspect them. To ask, is this helping me live with integrity, or is it dragging me away from myself? This is where Stoicism begins. Not with denying life, not with being emotionless, but with understanding that your inner world is the only territory you truly own, and the quality of that territory determines the quality of your life. Marcus Aurelius became an emperor by birth, but he became a wise man by choice. And that choice began with mastering the empire within.
Marcus Aurelius returned to one idea again and again in meditations. Everything slips away. He wrote it not as poetry, not as philosophy for the sake of sounding wise, but as a man watching his friends die, his children die, his enemies rise and fall, his own body grow older under the armor of an emperor. Marcus was surrounded by change, brutal, undeniable and constant, and instead of running from it, he looked directly at it. He would remind himself each morning, this could be your last day. Not to frighten himself, but to sharpen his vision, to bring his attention back from the fog of habit. Because when you look at your life as if every moment matters, suddenly your anger looks small, your worries look hollow, and your time becomes sacred. For Marcus, impermanence wasn't a punishment, it was liberation. If everything is temporary, then you don't need to cling so tightly. If everything is passing, then you don't need to chase endlessly. If everything fades, then you can begin to appreciate what stands before you right now. Stoicism doesn't ask you to pretend death isn't real. It asks you to use that truth as a compass, a way of orienting yourself toward what is meaningful instead of what is trivial. Marcus understood that a short life lived consciously is far more profound than a long life wasted. He understood that when you accept impermanence, you stop arguing with reality. You stop expecting the world to give you more time, more guarantees, more security than it ever promised. And in that acceptance, something rare appears: calm. Not the calm of comfort, but the calm of clarity. Marcus wasn't obsessed with death. He was obsessed with living well while he was still alive. Marcus Aurelius treated his emotions the way a disciplined guard watches the gates of a city. Not with paranoia, not with fear, but with steady, alert awareness. He knew that most people are ruled not by events, but by their reactions to those events, and he refused to hand over his inner world to chance. For him, a mind is a battlefield long before any sword is raised. Anger, fear, pride, resentment, these are not random moods. They are signals, intruders, distortions in the lens through which we see reality. And Marcus insists on noticing them the moment they appear. He writes, "Your mind will take the shape of what it frequently holds." That idea is sharper than it sounds. If you let one irritated thought linger, another joins it. If you repeat a grievance in your head, it grows teeth. If you rehearse an insult someone gave you, you carry their voice inside you for hours. A single unexamined emotion becomes a chain that can quietly drag your day downward. So emotional vigilance is not about suppressing feelings. It's about catching them early, before they distort your judgment. Marcus observes every emotion as if asking, is this helping me live well, or is this pulling me away from reason? If it pulls him away, he pauses. He re-examines the story he's telling himself. He returns to what he can control. He reminds himself that the mind becomes calmer the moment it stops arguing with things it cannot change. This discipline doesn't turn him into a cold statue. It turns him into someone who can feel deeply without drowning. You can see why this mattered for an emperor. When millions depend on your decisions, your emotions cannot be impulsive guests slipping into the throne room. They must be understood, moderated, questioned, not to deny humanity, but to preserve clarity. Emotional vigilance is simply the habit of checking in with yourself before the world checks you. People often misunderstand Stoicism as emotional numbness, but Marcus Aurelius practiced something far more human, a kind of gentle distance from life's chaos without ever becoming cold toward the world. Detachment for him was not withdrawal, it was clarity. He believed the world doesn't hurt us nearly as much as our attachments do, our insistence that people must behave a certain way, that outcomes must align with our desires, that life must obey our expectations like a well-trained animal. Marcus saw how fragile these demands made us, how easily disappointment could shatter our peace. So he tried to hold things lightly, not carelessly, but lightly. A friend betrays you, a plan collapses, a hope dissolves. None of this is pleasant,
Marcus never pretended otherwise, but he refused to let the value of his life be determined by events outside his control. He trained himself to step back, breathe, observe the situation as if he were seeing it from above. This detachment protects the mind the way distance protects the eyes from bright flames. You can see more clearly when you're not pressed up against the fire. But notice something important. Detachment never meant indifference. Marcus cared deeply about justice, kindness, duty, and the well-being of others. He simply understood that caring does not require clinging. You can show compassion without demanding a reward. You can act with integrity even if the world ignores it. You can love without needing the universe to love you back in the way you imagine. He wrote, "Do not be carried away by imagining how life ought to be. Look clearly at how life is." That's the key. Stoic detachment is a form of love, not escape. A stable heart that does not collapse every time the world shifts. A person who masters this becomes harder to shake but easier to be around. Strong but not rigid. Present but not overwhelmed. Someone capable of holding life in open hands. Marcus Aurelius lived with power, responsibility, and endless pressure. Yet he believed that most of what happens in life is completely outside our control. Empires rise and fall. People praise and blame. Fortune lifts us up and knocks us down without warning. The Stoics called this vast web of events fate, not in a mystical sense, but as the natural unfolding of causes beyond any one person. Now, here's the challenge. If so much is predetermined by forces bigger than us, where does freedom come from? Marcus's answer is surprisingly liberating.
Optimistic. He believed our freedom lies entirely within the one thing fate can't touch, our inner response. The body can be exhausted. The schedule can be chaotic. The people around you can be foolish, hostile, or unreliable. But your judgments, the way you interpret and react to events, remain your own private domain. This is what Marcus called the inner fortress. Not a fortress of isolation, but of sovereignty. A mind fortified against panic, bitterness, and self-destruction. A place inside yourself that even the storms of fate cannot break into. He often reminded himself, external things are not the problem. Your judgments about them are the problem. This is where Stoicism becomes a kind of psychological revolution. You can't control the trajectory of history, but you can control the honesty of your intentions. You can't force others to behave well, but you can choose whether their behavior corrupts your character. You can't govern what the world gives you, but you can govern how you use it. Fate determines the terrain. Freedom determines the path you walk on that terrain. When Marcus wrote his meditations, he wasn't writing a philosophy for scholars. He was strengthening his own discipline, brick by brick, in this inner citadel. Every entry in that journal is a reminder that freedom is something built, not gifted. And the more solid your inner fortress becomes, the fewer enemies life can send that truly threaten your peace. Marcus Aurelius never let himself forget a simple truth. Everything is passing. Not in a poetic way, but in a brutally honest, almost surgical way. Cities crumble. Memories fade. Your closest friend grows older each second. Even the feelings inside your chest, the excitement, the fear, the frustration, rise and disappear like breath in cold air. To Marcus, this wasn't depressing, it was clarifying. If everything is temporary, then chasing permanence becomes a kind of self-inflicted illusion. Holding grudges becomes pointless. Chasing fame becomes laughable. and worrying about the small fluctuations of daily life becomes a waste of the one thing you can never get back: time. He often pictured life as a river, unstoppable, ever moving, never repeating itself. You step into the water, and the moment you do, that water is already gone. New water replaces it instantly. The whole universe works this way. So he trained himself to live with a strange combination of humility and urgency. Humility because nothing you achieve lasts forever. Urgency because your moment is now and it won't come twice. Impermanence for Marcus wasn't an excuse to detach from life. It was a reason to participate fully without clinging. Enjoy what you have, but don't chain your happiness to it. Hold the people you love, but don't pretend they belong to you. Work hard, but don't expect the world to reward you exactly the way you imagine. When you understand impermanence deeply, life becomes lighter. The small annoyances lose their sting. The big challenges feel less impossible. And time, the most elusive thing, stops slipping through your fingers so carelessly. Marcus wanted his mind to rest lightly on the present moment, like a bird perching on a branch it doesn't intend to own. He wasn't escaping reality, he was finally touching it. Marcus Aurelius drew a sharp line between two ways of meeting reality. One strengthens the soul, the other quietly destroys it. Acceptance to him meant looking at the world without illusions and saying, "This is what exists. I didn't choose it, but I will act wisely within it." Resignation meant sinking into the same reality and whispering, "There's nothing I can do, so why try?" The difference looks small on the surface, but inside the mind, it changes everything. Acceptance is active. Resignation is passive. Acceptance makes you sharper. Resignation dulls them. Acceptance makes you responsible. Resignation makes you powerless. When Marcus faced hardship, whether it was betrayal in the Senate, sickness in his body, or the death of children he loved, he refused to collapse into passivity. He didn't tell himself comforting lies, and he didn't pretend pain was pleasant. He simply acknowledged that pain was part of the human contract. But acknowledgement was only the first step. After that came effort. If something could be changed, he moved towards changing it. If something couldn't be changed, he focused on changing his attitude towards it. In this way, acceptance protected his inner life from chaos, while still sharpening his ability to act with courage and clarity. Resignation, on the other hand, breaks your inner discipline. It disguises itself as calm, but in reality it is surrender, a quiet erosion of your will. Marcus avoided it like a poison. He believed that once the mind accepts helplessness, it becomes easier to adopt more helplessness tomorrow. To live well, he thought, is to stand in front of reality and remain upright. Not numb, not defeated, just steady. Acceptance says, "I will meet life on its own terms, but I will not abandon my ability to choose my response." This was one of the deepest muscles of Stoicism, not a soft surrender, but a proud, disciplined cooperation with the truth. Plato's allegory of the cave remains one of the most profound insights into human perception and knowledge. He asks us to imagine prisoners chained in a dark cave, only able to see shadows cast on the wall by objects behind them. To these prisoners, the shadows are reality, limited, distorted, and incomplete. Plato uses this image to illustrate the difference between appearances and true knowledge. Most people live their lives seeing only shadows, superficial impressions, societal conventions, or partial truths. Liberation comes when one turns towards the light, gradually understanding the deeper realities that govern existence. This journey from shadow to light mirrors the philosophical path itself, moving from ignorance to wisdom, from assumption to reasoned understanding. It is both challenging and illuminating, requiring patience, reflection, and courage to face truths that may initially blind or discomfort us. In the quiet of night, imagine yourself slowly turning towards the light, observing the shadows with gentle curiosity, and letting the mind expand beyond the limitations of immediate perception. Each insight brings calm awareness, quiet reflection, and a deeper sense of connection to truth. Plato believed that beyond the physical world lies a realm of perfect eternal forms, unchanging ideals that give meaning to the things we see around us. A chair, for instance, is never perfectly chair-like in reality, but it participates in the ideal form of chairness. These forms are the true reality, while the material world is a fleeting reflection, always imperfect and incomplete. Knowledge for Plato is not about memorizing facts or observing appearances. It is about grasping these eternal truths through reason and philosophical inquiry. By contemplating forms, we refine our understanding, align our actions with virtue, and approach a life of wisdom and moral clarity. It is a journey inward and upward, where thought rises above fleeting sensations to embrace enduring truth. As you settle into quiet reflection, imagine your mind reaching beyond the ordinary, touching the timeless forms, and feeling the gentle serenity that comes from recognizing deeper patterns and higher truths. As you rest, let Plato's wisdom guide your mind into calm reflection. From the shadows of the cave to the eternal forms, Plato's philosophy reminds us to seek truth beyond appearances and to cultivate reason, virtue, and understanding. Consider the journey of the mind, questioning, observing, and slowly turning towards the light of knowledge. Each reflection, each insight, and each thoughtful choice brings clarity, serenity, and a sense of calm that carries into the quiet of night. Before you drift fully into sleep, a gentle reminder: if you enjoyed this exploration of Plato's philosophy and wish to experience more reflective, calming content, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Your support allows us to continue sharing these mindful journeys. Let the contemplation of truth, wisdom, and eternal forms